the person who actually convert more than anybody is Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. Just by reading his books, people become convert to Islam. But on many other levels, I always say that if we started from where Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi ended, we would have all been in a beautiful, in a much better places. But unfortunately, whether it's the African American community, whether it's the immigrant community, we haven't been true to the legacy of Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala. We haven't been true to his legacy. And that's why we keep on, it took us 9/11 to slap us in the face, to wake up to the idea of resistance. The idea of resistance died out with him. And even in the tradition, and I say that again, Malcolm was a provoker. And we need to provoke. I can tell you that Malcolm, if he went to a madrasa, it would never have been Malcolm. Traditional Islam is in a serious crisis. It doesn't produce. Look, we're looking for the next Malcolm to come out of prison. You understand what I mean? Like, I want you to think about this a little bit. To come out of prison. Not from Taysir, not from Qalam, not from Dar al-Qasim, not from. Why? Because we're not true to this tradition. We're not true. We are, as Sunni institutions, we held on to quietism, and we make it a theology of subordination, even though at a time where we should not be subordinated. Right? Malcolm revived in us the real Islam, as Sidna Bilal saw it, a liberating force. As Sidna Suhaib saw a liberating force, involved in every aspect of their lives. And that's why Sidna Ammar and so all of those became Muslim, because it meant freedom to them. It meant dignity to them. Right? Now, the other thing that I wanted to say that I feel is extremely important for all us to pay attention to is that, the whole project of MLK, you could judge it the way you want to judge it. Whether it succeeded or didn't succeed, that's another story, right? But the level of success that it had, I do believe strongly that it only had that success because at the backdrop of that message, at the backdrop of that project, was Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. It was America was running from Malcolm to MLK. It was running from Malcolm. Malcolm was too raw for America. And no, in fact, what did Malcolm do? Malcolm just raised a mirror in front of America to see its ugliness. And boy, white America was ugly. It was ugly. And it's still ugly. Right? It's still ugly. Look here. I mean, we just voted. Right? And we theologized that. Right? Indeed, right? So, and he raised a mirror not just for the white America, he raised the mirror for African American community as well. Some of the things that I used to remember, Malcolm is critiquing, he says, I don't remember the exact words, but he says, rahmatullahi alayhi, if my sisters paid as much attention to what goes on into their brains as much as they put in making their hair blonde, trying to emulate the white men's standards, they will be much better. So he was an equal opportunity critique because he cared, and because for him it was a combination of a lot of things. It was a combination of a high intellectual diagnosis of the situation in America, and you could just watch that in some of his metaphors, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. The chicken came home to roost, the ballot or the bullet. These are not just titles, right? The slave of the house and the slave of the field, right? These are deep intellectual diagnosis of society that takes tremendous amount of thinking, tremendous amount of understanding of realities, and tremendous amount of looking ahead, right? But also, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, he put all of that into the ground. He was not somebody, an intellectual on the ivory tower. He was somebody who worked hard on a daily basis to better the situation of the African American community. Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi had a firm belief that I wish that every person, every Muslim would think that way. Malcolm thought without any hesitation that the cure to the element of America is Islam. And he worked for it. This is what he believed. He believed that the cure for Americans' all social, political ailment and economic injustices lays in Islam. Because this is how he saw Islam. So what type of Islam do we present to America to see solutions in it? If we adopt the ways of Jahiliyyah and we become a continuation and we become an extension to the ignorance that America is. How could it be? How could it be? If we're so enamored with so much of what's going on in there, so enamored with it to the level that we got to roll our sleeves, right? And go to change it. And be part of that. Be part. So whether you're an immigrant, like I see a lot of my brothers and my sisters who come in from Bangladesh, your struggle for freedom, you'll learn a lot from Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala. You will learn a lot, wherever you're at. Whatever you're at. Right. So last thing, my dear brothers and my dear sisters, as we stand here right now at this moment of our history, that we don't know what this fool in the White House is going to do tomorrow. And we know that he's going to be backed, and we know so as we have to stand in here and revive the model of Malcolm in regard to resistance. We have to be the resistance in America. We have to be. We don't have other choice. We have to be the resistance. And I look around and I see whether it's the American immigrant community or white convert or African American community, and we're lost. So when we come back to Malcolm rahmatullahi ta'ala, I hope that we come back to Malcolm to find ourselves. That we come back to Malcolm to find our voice. That we come back to Malcolm to find what does it mean to be a Muslim in America? Because he exemplified that. Because he showed us how to be a Muslim that the world pay attention to. Right? That he showed us that. So we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on Malcolm. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep the light of Malcolm living. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enlighten his grave. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to أن يجزي عنا خير جزاء, to reward him immensely for all that which he had done for us, sacrifices and all of that. We ask Allah ta'ala to forgive him, to elevate him, and to purify him. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us to follow his model and take it to heights that he dreamed of. MLK dreamt, right? And a lot of people think that dream had actually been realized. And I don't think so. And if he's alive right now, we would think that it didn't. But Malcolm dreamt as well. And I hope and pray that we can actually realize the dream of Malcolm. My dear and sincere gratitude to Dr. King. Every time we call upon him, he's here, enlightening us with his ideas and his reads that always have twists and always have beautiful handles and beautiful ways of looking at things. And today was not different at all. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. May Allah Ta'ala reward you, Dr. King. May Allah Ta'ala bless your children and your family. Inshallah, bi'idhnillah, we always look forward to have an extended time where we come and spend time together, inshallah, and talk about these issues. Intellectual interactions rarely happen in the Muslim community, sadly. And we think that we're going to solve the issues of the community, but just solving problems. Just having some problem solver solve the problems. Much of our problems lay in the depth of intellectual interactions and research. And we need to do that. And we hope, inshallah, Taysir can be at the beginning, can be at the vanguard of that, inshallah. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah kulla khair wa starizana. May Allah Ta'ala reward you. May Allah Ta'ala accept from you. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.
Sheikh Hassan, we're very grateful to you. So Imam Khalid, you'll have to give us some guidance on time because we'd love to be in dialogue with our speaker, but also Dr. Bilal has been traveling since early this morning. We have food that's been ready for a while. So what is your advice for us at this time? Okay. So I think that we want to respect the fact that we have this dinner that's waiting for us. So I think that we could perhaps take one very succinct, concise question, just one perhaps, and then we will wrap up with that question, and then we will go to dinner. I would invite our Tastier students to please make sure that you're helping with serving the plates and so on. One question for our speaker, and I'm so sorry to only be able to allow one question at this time, but we need to feed everybody. All right. Yes, Brother Nasir, you've got the floor.
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Bilal, for the speech. My question for you is related to, are you familiar with the article Islam and a Cultural Imperative by Dr. Omar Farouk Abdullah?
No, but I am familiar with a number of his other writings.
Okay.
So,
well, your idea about indigenizing Islam in America parallels a lot of what he spoke about in that writing. And I'm wondering if in your vision, if we as Muslims have had any measure of success in indigenizing Islam in America, what are some steps that we could take to do better about that? And if you could comment a little bit about the success of the Black American community, in particular about indigenizing Islam in America. That might not be concise. I am sorry.
But it's spot on. You took my Islam in America class, didn't you?
I did.
Alhamdulillah. All right, very good.
no, that's first part of it. Runs in the family. I'm actually shy. They manifest. So I think there are communities, networks, whatever terms we want to use, that have been more exemplary in interesting ways, though not necessarily the entire community doing it, because it's a balancing act. So here's background to answer this question. Context. I took my Shahada in West Africa, my Shahada in the Gambia. And when I came to the U.S., I actually didn't know that most Black American Muslim communities had not taken their Islamic scholarly heritage, from African Shia, African ulama. That was news for me, right? And so as I kind of cast about, I gravitated naturally to people who, like me before Islam, had been sort of nationalistic and Africanistic, in cultural ways in particular. And so I ended up spending a lot of time. I think she has clarity on the point she wants to make. I'll finish in just a moment. Say this. Ran away. Okay. Yeah, you fine. So I found myself sitting with the W. Dean Muhammad community in Atlanta quite a lot. Anybody who's familiar with that community narrative, that leader, they were not particularly Pan-African. I wouldn't even say were not. I'd say mostly still are, right? Very American, Black American culture grounding. And in Atlanta, they had found a way to balance that with also, I would say, a recent infusion of students who studied in Syria, so studied Islamic science in Syria, and the foundation was laid right by the imam who preceded
those youngsters coming back having a Harvard education, which is kind of not, if you understand that the community in Atlanta was not necessarily, oh, are you ready again? Okay, you have to wait till, not necessarily, a bunch of professionals, but there was a decent number of college educated folk in the group or college exposed group, and the Atlanta University Center, of which Morehouse is just runs, is there in Atlanta. So black folks with some exposure to high level are a normal part of the Atlanta scene. I found, to my surprise, there are communities in that national network of communities that, in their effort to indigenize, had fallen kind of out of the balance. So even though my exposure to the WD community is largely those who I think have a really good balance, it's not inherent to that whole national community. So exactly what made it happen, I don't know how much that Atlanta unique thing is responsible for the Atlanta branch of that community. It's so well balanced. Because actually, some of the youngsters in that community point to the Baltimore community as having some leaders who taught them, guided them through their experiences. So I think it's a much more complicated picture. I have not, by any stretch of the imagination, been able to get to know some of the communities that, for lack of a better term, I would often hear people kind of refer to as shake your head, almost failure, as Muslim community. They're solidly Black American, right? Kept the culture piece, but they're their cutting edge Islamic part is not where many folks say it needs to be. It takes more study to get to the root of your question, like what makes it happen. Now, other groups, I think, maintain some other aspects in terms of indigenizing, and maintain some other aspects that really that Atlanta community, Atlanta WD community, kind of didn't retain as well. So, for example, if you're familiar with the West End community, they're part of a national community that came out of the Dar al-Islam movement, and the Dar stayed in the trenches, right? Atlanta Masjid community is, I would say, successfully educated professionals to the extent that much of their energy is internal community building with some external connection. Whereas the Dar is still giving shahada to a whole gang at a time on a almost weekly basis. Every time I go, it's another 5, 6, 7 brothers or a clique stuff that you'd rather they not do. They take shahada and change their direction. So it's different, which is not to say that that's completely foreign to the Atlanta. That's a different part of our indigenous cultural mandate and experience historically that is probably better maintained in that West End, and not just the West End, their national components in other states. So how they did that, kind of do. In particular, it's in my mind what stands out is their strategy / model of giving shahada to cliques at a time, of really staying. That was the model that the nation took in Philly. And Philly has, I don't know if everybody knows, Philly has a informal status as like the most Muslim Black American community in the country, whether you're Muslim or not. It's just the de facto, like go to the barber shop. I want a sunnah. You're not Muslim. You don't even. It's just the name of the haircut, the way your beard is going, right? So, yeah, I don't see enough consistency for me to be able to make a solid analysis based on data, but I think it's an important question, and there seem to be some suggested elements for maybe a preliminary analysis. Say, hey, keeping elements of Black American culture, talking about indigenizing Black American, keeping elements of that culture that other Muslims might actually look at you. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And just being like, you'll figure it out. Having that sense of purpose and understanding that of the deen in its how it
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Dr. Bilal. Thank you, Brother Nasir, for a very thoughtful question. And I think it's actually a wonderful note on which to conclude our evening that we in this diverse group, we have members of Muslim community of Knoxville, we have guests who have been our supporters at the Palestine Solidarity marches and so on, are here tonight. And I know it's been a long evening, but a really edifying evening. Alhamdulillah. May Allah be praised. And now we're going to have the opportunity, talk about sort of like indigenization. We're going to have the opportunity to enjoy a halal repast of soul food. So it's a great way to end this evening. It's a great way for us, I think, to pay homage to those tangible aspects of African American Muslim culture that I think connect all of us, right? So so with that, we are so grateful, Dr. Bilal, and to our panelists and Imam Khalid and everybody who helped put this program together. And thank you so much to the chefs for your patience with us. And with that, we will wrap up our program. وصلى الله على سيد محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. And I believe it is time to eat.